Ucha Sanev, and welcome to the Ra'ama Hetepa Men podcast show powered by the Maā Sa Society. In this podcast, we'll explore the Maā Sa philosophy, the age of Aquarius consciousness, culture, and the restoration of spiritual authority in your everyday life. Today's conversation is entitled Vitality of Self. What is relationship wealth? Or, in other words, relationship wealth. Talks about accumulation of material wealth according to what you place a high value on. And so Chefa typically talks about but placing a high value on things and how that value is placed in the sense of pleasure, in the sense of enjoyment. You are driven to accumulate things in abundance because those things become the foundation of your pleasure and enjoyment. So we're talking about today relationship wealth because, as you know, in the Black community, we're suffering from some of the most negative statistics out here. 90% household run by single families. Most children have very limited access to their fathers. As you heard me speak upon last week, in certain urban places here in America, in the South, there's close to 40,000 people that have HIV. So this concept of placement of value and how it impacts our relationships is very important for us to consider and have a conversation about, because you, unfortunately, have been wired to think inappropriately, which is allowing you to develop these habits in the name of pleasure. We have to get to the root cause of why some of us are manifesting in this regard, because if we get to the root cause, we'll be able to heal. And as we say in our Eri Ma'a affirmation, we have the power to redeem, restore, and rise above sin and its consequences. It doesn't matter what you find yourself in. It doesn't matter the good soup or the negative soup you find yourself in. You have the power to redeem, restore, and rise above sin and its consequences, because you are the source manifesting through the limitations of the mind itself. Once knowledge and understanding has been provided to you, you have the ability to rise up out of the ashes as a result. But see, knowledge and understanding has been hidden from you, and you have been given a system and expression that is simply there to keep you in a position of servitude so that you can make money for other people. And part of that position of servitude is to keep you in a state of physical, mental, and health dependence. Keep you in a state of mental destruction, mental lower station, and health, so that you can always manifest immorally, so that you can always manifest a certain way so you can serve the needs of this system. And so hopefully I'm going to give you some understanding and knowledge. So we have to get understanding and knowledge back into ourselves, back, right? And put that back in the spirit so that we can grow beyond the negative earth circumstances of life. 42,000 people that are walking around with HIV in one city area should be an epidemic that should dominate the news. So the question is, why doesn't it dominate the news? Why aren't we sounding the alarm? Because that number was alarming when I heard it. Because you being in that state is serving the needs of the system. And that is exactly why it's not being projected, and we're not looking to do things to stop this process. But we're here today to talk about, how did we get here? And one of the ways we get here is based upon our relationship wealth. Now, again, before I start, I want to also say this. One of the greatest ways to keep you enslaved, one of the greatest ways to keep you in a position of servitude, if a specific people or organization wanted to kill you, one of the fastest and quickest ways to kill you is to diminish your vitality. And one of the ways to diminish your vitality, the quickest way to diminish your vitality is to shift your values, what you place a high value on, to shift it towards pleasure in and of itself versus the value and impact of things upon ourselves, upon our way of being, upon our vitality of self. That is the quickest way to kill you, is through training you to be inappropriate value on pleasure through material things. It's also the quickest way to render you dependent in servitude. If you do not have vitality and vigor, if you are reaped with illness, disease, and all the expressions of low vitality, poor weight balance, and so on and so on, then yes, you are in a position of dependence and servitude. And so that's why we want to have this conversation. But anyway, we got here based upon our placement of value. Okay. So now we have evolved to a space where men and women aren't necessarily interested in bonding with each other, building with each other, and growing with each other, because their value is simply in expressing pleasure and enjoyment through the accumulation of sex, through the accumulation of the vehicle of the person itself. So they're not interested in building relationships, building something that lasts, building prosperous children. No, that's not the goal anymore. The goal is to seek the fulfillment of pleasure through the accumulation of sexual partners and things of that nature. So when we speak about, having a 90% single mother household where a majority of the boys, especially boys and girls, aren't actually manifesting with their parent, with the father, and these kids grow up without a father, and therefore they become an issue within society. Now, again, I'm not saying that all people who grew up in this manner find themselves in this regard, but the majority do. So they're struggling in life right now. And so we got to have this conversation. Let's look at an example that's been in the news. If you've been in the news and you followed the news, you saw this Stefan Diggs, and he's become famous, one, because he's married. He's not married, I guess. He's dating Cardi B, but also he's was a NFL football player on the New England Patriots. And so right now he's kind of stuck in limbo. But anyway, he had to go through a court trial because his cook basically said that he assaulted her. And so he had to go to court, and he was found, not guilty, and went through that process. But if you look at his face on the court channel, if you looked at his face, you could tell that he was struggling with trying to figure out, how did I get here? How did I find myself in this space? Now, mind you, he has multiple children by multiple baby mamas. As a matter of fact, Cardi B also had a child for him. And so this person was living with him as a cook. And he had an intimate relationship with this person while she was there, as working with him as a cook, and so on and so on. And so therefore, as the story goes, it looks like she was able to participate in his life up until a point where he cut that participation off. And I think that's what caused her reaction to him, and therefore forcing her to seek revenge through placing these accusations upon him. Now, based on the courts, it seemed like she was leaning towards that she fabricated this whole thing. And as the jury actually acknowledged that as well. But the point of me understanding that I want to talk about Stefan Diggs, and I want to talk about the sister, because to be honest with you, I understand why the sister did what she did. See, this is the thing we got to understand. That's why Chefa and, understanding vitality self and understanding, relationship wealth. I can understand. I don't think what she did was incorrect. It was wrong, but I understand why she did it. So Stefan Diggs, she hired this woman as a cook and then entered into an repeated intimate relationship with her through a period of time. At a certain, she became so close to him that she actually was able to participate in a lot of the things that he was doing. His drive for pleasure and enjoyment through sex motivates him to accumulate women as simply material vessels of that particular value without thinking about the repercussions of the relationship that he builds with them. So his value has been shifted towards simply pleasure in and of itself, and that pleasure is being brought through the physical vehicle without considering the impact of the relationship itself. So I can see him right now sitting at the court case. If you watch the court, I can see his face, and I knew exactly what he was thinking. How did I get here? Well, you got here because you had an immature placement of value. Women are only vessels of pleasure. And therefore, when we think that way, we are putting ourselves in harm's way to experience the repercussions of those types of relationships. At the same token, we have women out here now who are saying that they want a lifestyle. They want a man to provide a lifestyle to them. Their whole concept of relationships is how much money that man has, and therefore, through my relationship with you, you're going to provide me with a particular lifestyle. Now, mind you, the type of men that are able to provide this lifestyle may only be like 1% of the population. Very hard to get to these guys, but there's so you got football players, basketball players, you got entertainers and things of that nature, and you got these women that are kind of swooning, if you will, around them, hoping to be chosen so that they can get this lifestyle, whether that be through getting married or whether that be through getting pregnant and having a child. And now that person is responsible for paying a lofty monthly child support payment. Whatever the case may be, women have put in their minds that they're going to go out and provide and grab onto a lifestyle through the relationship itself. But again, what we find is that, number one, your choice in the partnership is incorrect because you're placing a high value. But number two, it's going to impact the kids. But that's where we are. So when we talk about Atlanta, and we're talking about the placement of value shifting from increase and, increase of spiritual growth and things of that nature that you get through the relationship, we're not talking about that anymore. We're talking about simply the gratification of pleasure through the relationship. And since the source is manifesting through the limitations of the mind, both in the man and woman, when you attempt to simply use a vessel of the source simply for pleasure, you are obstructing the source from knowledge of self. As we say in the Maā Sa society, knowledge of self is the reason why, quote unquote, the universe or Ma'at came into manifestation. It's the reason why we exist. It's to bring knowledge of self into experience. So when you are utilizing an expression of source simply for sensual gratification, you are obstructing the source from experiencing knowledge of self. And since the whole apparatus is built upon source manifesting knowledge of self through the vehicle of man and woman, then the only thing you can manifest in that regard is eventual pain and suffering, which is an expression of the high incidence of HIV in the Atlanta area. You can only experience pain and suffering manifesting that way. You see, the Maā Sa teaches that, in the grand cycle of things, man and woman fell, right? So at a certain point in this grand cycle, man and woman would fall to the things of earth. And it says the things of earth that was put there simply for your empowerment. You see, everything in your life is about empowerment. You should eat for empowerment. You should wed for empowerment. You should be intimate for your empowerment. So we're talking about the source manifesting through the limitations of the mind itself. And source says that the things of earth from which we can experience was simply there for our empowerment. So we should seek empowerment. The greatest expression of empowerment is through relationships. We're all expressions, relative expressions of ignorance and experience. My experience, if I relate to you, my experience should uplift your ignorance. Your experience should uplift my ignorance. That is the thing. And so in our understanding, in our scripture, Nebuchadnezzar expresses that it created Ma'at and wants to embrace itself. See, we are here to embrace each other through relationships so that we can increase each other through your talents and skills, uplifting me from my liabilities and ignorance. Ignorance is always united with knowledge and experience through relationships. You exist as relative states of ignorance, relative states of experience. That means that there's a person here in this world, somewhere in your immediate experience, that is here to serve, to uplift you beyond your ignorance. That is the power of relationships. But see, when you are not in a relationship according to that concept, then you are functioning in this world through blind ignorance. You are functioning in this world through blind ignorance. When you're not related to somebody, you are manifesting ignorance. And when you're manifesting ignorance within Ma'at, you can only experience malevolence, pain, suffering, and misery. As we said before, Ma'at, the concept of Ma'at, the supreme intelligence, it doesn't care whether you're a good person, it doesn't care whether you're a bad person, it doesn't care whether you're black, white, brown, Puerto Rican, it doesn't care about any of that stuff. See, the only thing it cares about is your choice. And so when you're driven through ignorance, that choice functioning with Ma'at is going to produce outcomes of pain, suffering, and misery when it's driven through ignorance. And one of the ways that you can guarantee that you will always stay in ignorance is by being single. It's about moving forward, not seeing placing a high value in the power of relationships within your life. See, when you're driving strictly through ignorance, when you don't have that person in your life, that intimate relationship in your life that can provide you with increase, that can provide you with power, and you to them, vice versa. When you don't have that person, you're going around in Ma'at, the supreme intelligence, manifesting through ignorance. And you can only experience pain and suffering as a result. We are manifesting decisions within Ma'at, and those decisions create outcomes. See, we don't point to a person up in the sky and say that's that, and that entity is managing my life. So therefore that entity is overlooking that I'm choosing to stay in ignorance. No, you are manifesting ignorance within the supreme intelligence as Ma'at. And that system is built to ferret out ignorance, to force you towards increase and prosperity through manifesting misery and suffering in your life. So when you have 42,000 people walking around with HIV, even though we have drugs now that can help out with that, and even though the rate of death is a lot lower, still you're walking around with that. That is an expression of misery and suffering. That should tell you to re-engineer your decision tree so you can make greater decisions moving forward, so that you can shift your value from pleasure in things to the pleasure and value in the relationship itself. Yes, once you're related to a person who's good for you and who's able to utilize their experience to uplift you from your ignorance, now you have greater opportunity for happiness and greater opportunity to enjoy some of the things that you're enjoying right now in the state of ignorance. Why do you want to marry somebody simply because you want them to provide you with a so-called standard of living? Why don't you marry somebody that increases you so that you guys can get together and create your own standard of living through working together? You see, so going back to Mr. Stefan Diggs, if you looked at that court case, you saw his face. I'm telling you right now, most people have been there. Most men have been there. You not necessarily been in court, but most people have been there, especially men, where you go, why am I here? I can't believe I'm here. And you're in a good place because you should be questioning your decisions. I allowed my lust to put me in this situation. And I'm not asking you to be chaste. I'm not asking you to manifest austerities. What I am getting you to understand is that your life is organized to bring you to this point. So Mr. Stefan Diggs is actually in a good space because the universe has clearly spoken to him and said, this path is not for you. Transition. So we're being asked to change our choice. We're being asked to evolve our choice. We're being asked to mature our choice. So when you have 42,000 people with HIV in a particular city, they are functioning through straight ignorance and they're being asked to change their choice, to transition. And how do we change our choice in this particular situation? As we're talking about Chefa, as we're talking about vitality itself, relationship wealth, how do you change your choice? By transitioning your value. Transitioning your value from sex and lifestyle to power of the spirit, to increase in growth within, and have the knowledge and faith that once that increase in growth within you takes place, have the knowledge and faith that it's going to provide you with the lifestyle good for you, the lifestyle that you're going to be able to enjoy to the fullest, the lifestyle that's going to put you in a position where you can have eternal happiness, the lifestyle that's not going to put you in a burden of enduring situations of pain and suffering like Mr. Stefan Diggs just did on TV. You know, we are the source manifesting through the limitations of the mind. Ma'at came into manifestation for the whole point of bringing us into states of benevolence and prosperity. We have to validate prosperity and benevolence through our choice within Ma'at. But Ma'at is here to provide us with that experience to acknowledge choice in alignment to truth. And you have to know that those negative expressions of misery, suffering, and poverty that we are experiencing, that Atlanta is experiencing, that Mr. Stefan Diggs is experiencing, is not our nature, it's not our natal point, it's not the purpose of our life. The purpose of our life is to experience happiness, benevolence, and prosperity. However, if we find ourselves in states of pain, suffering, and misery, that is simply telling us to do what? Transition our choice, transition our value, placing the value in relationships themselves. So as we endure the rest of this Chefa cycle, I want you to think about where you're placing your value. Your value should be about increase and prosperity, which brings you all the things that you want in your life. And typically that increase comes through your relationship. So try your best to work through your relationship to make that the most happiest experience, and you'll find yourself bestowed with great prosperity and abundance. I have a relationship coaching business that I've worked with over 100 different couples, and I want to provide that service to you. If you're seeking happiness in your relationship, if you're trying to figure out why you haven't been able to sustain a long-term relationship, and so on and so on, feel free to reach out to us at info@maasa.org. That's info@maasa, MAA-SA.org. Also, feel free to join us every Sunday for our Maā Sa sermon, where we continue to go over basic principles of the Maā Sa Society. And last but not least, every Monday at 7:30 Central Standard Time, we also do meditations. Ucha Seneb Sa Ma'a.